Let's talk to James Hummerstone-Pope now, who's a housing expert, because we had a story come across our desk the other day about the idea of migrants being put up not only now in hotels, but also moved into homes and into private homes, rented private homes. And it's causing a bit of a knock-on effect, a bit of a bad, perhaps unthought-through knock-on effect, which is that we've heard from loads of people saying, we've just been told by our landlord that he's terminating our lease and he's basically kicking us out. Because he's got a better offer from the government via circa. James, very good morning to you. According to...
Morning, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks for joining me. According to the government, they've got something like 30,000 asylum seekers who need a home. They've got an ever-growing portfolio of something like 7,000 homes. This is circa who was saying this. They've organised an event in the Malvern Hills sometime this month as part of a drive to get hold of more homes. There are some landlords I've spoken to who have said they don't really want to rent their places out to migrants. They're not going to go for it. But obviously an awful lot of landlords will, because the monies being offered are in excess sometimes of what the sort of market value is.
Well, exactly. And from a landlord's perspective, it's guaranteed rent. It's more than the market value, and they know they're going to get it on time every month for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
So you can understand why some landlords are sort of grabbing the hand of the government and saying, yeah, I'll take that deal. But the reality is that's having a massively negative effect on our private rental sector, and more importantly, pushing more and more families into temporary accommodation. And actually what we're seeing is more and more children in temporary accommodation in those really young, developing years where they need to be in a stable home environment where they have space to learn and grow.
Yes, and I mean you'll be looking at the screen on the right there saying calling all landlords. This was a kind of a clarion call that was put out by Circo, looking for landlords to give the rental properties out. Because the problem, I suppose, in essence, is there's just not enough property to go around, is there? An awful lot of people can't afford to buy houses now, so they're renting until maybe they can try and get a deposit together. But as I say, a lot of people getting in touch with us over the last few days saying that they're being informed basically by their landlord that he wants them out. And I don't know whether you could answer this question because it may be a legal question to some extent. I mean, if you've got a lease and the lease period or the notice period of that lease is a month or 2 months, can they just terminate it any time they want?
Well, a landlord has right at the end of your fixed term tenancy to give you notice for you to vacate that home. Some tenants refuse to leave, and in those cases then the landlord will take them to court, and then the court will evict them because the landlord has the right to take back their property and rent it to another individual. That is within the landlord's right to be able to do that, and that's part of the rent reform that Labour is trying to put in place at the moment. That's what we're seeing, the bills going through court right now. The reality is, though, is that, as you say, that's pushing more and more people into hardship and more people into homelessness.
Yes. And then, of course, if they do become homeless, they then go to the council, who then have to find them a home in the rental sector, which the council or the taxpayer effectively will have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality is we've got circa 1.3 million households currently on the waiting list in the UK, which is an obscene number. That's predicted to rise to circa 2 million over the next 10 years. And if we currently sit on our trajectory where we are right now, we've got roughly 20 years worth of work to do to clear that backlog. So the impact is obscene.
Yeah. And I mean, we'd heard from Reform talking about possibly challenging the idea that you can't put migrants into hotels because effectively that changes the nature of the property, if you like. It's no longer a hotel, effectively. It's now a hostel. Does the same apply possibly to homes? I mean, I know we've also spoken to people who have seen sort of multiple occupancy homes being converted in streets where there didn't used to be multiple occupancy homes. Will councils be able to object to some of those plans?
Well, councils, in the situation where you've got a house of multiple occupation, there has to be a licence granted for those. So local councils can refuse licences for those styles of properties. In terms of hotels, again, they have to go through a change of use to be able to utilise it for a different purpose other than being a hotel. And that's where I believe Reform are going to start challenging the government in terms of those housing policies, purely because they are not being used in the manner that they have the license to be used for right now.
Yes, exactly right. And could you not make that argument as well for the rented properties? I suppose is my point. Is that if it used to be rented to a family, and it's a 3-bedroom house which turned into a 7-bedroom house rented to 7 individuals who live like in a sort of bed-sit arrangement, effectively, does that change the use of the house?
It does. That then becomes a HMO. So then you would, in most council situations, you would need a HMO license, which has to be granted by the council. So yeah, you can't just move people out and turn your home into multiple bedsits, because there are rules and regulations. Because rooms have to be a certain size, there has to be circulation space, there has to be a usable kitchen and bathroom. So it's not just as easy as filling your home with people.
No, of course. And the other thing that's attractive, I suppose, for landlords is that I think Circa is also offering not only to continue to pay all the bills and to continue to pay for 5 years the rent, it's also, I think, guaranteeing to make any repairs that need doing as well.
Yeah, that's right. There's a hotel close to me that has been completely taken over. It now houses asylum seekers. The company that took that over offered the hotelier a very large sum of money to step away and not walk back into the building for the next 5 years.
Right.
They pay for all renovations, and they will pay to turn the property back into a hotel when their license comes to an end.
Yeah.
So, the money that's being spent is crazy.
Yes, and it's our money, which is even more crazy, unfortunately, because we don't seem to have any say in how that money is spent and when it's going to stop being spent.
Well, exactly. And it's essentially the tap's been turned on, the money is flowing away rapidly, and there seems to be very little control over what's being done with it and how it's being spent sensibly.
Yeah.
To hark back to the number of people we've currently got on the housing register that will include asylum seekers that have been given the right to stay in the UK legally, we have got 1.3 circa million households that need a home already.
Yeah. That's a big number, isn't it? Let's just go back once again, if we can, to the leasing arrangement. If you are currently renting and you're worried about this situation, if your landlord, say, for example, you've got a 2-year lease or something like that, and you're only halfway through it, and the landlord comes to you and says, look, I want you to move out. What's the legal position if he says, you have to be out by the end of next month or something?
Well, if you're halfway through your lease, they can't just terminate your lease unless there's a break clause. So the reality is, unless there's an agreement in place whereby either party can terminate that lease after a set period of time, that's called a break clause. Landlord can't do that. If you're at the end of your agreed fixed period, which could be 6, could be 18, could be 12, however many months that you've set your agreement for, if you're at the end of that period, the landlord currently has the right to take their property back and re-rent it to someone else. Right. What I would say to any listeners is, if you have a tenancy that's coming up for renewal and your landlord hasn't said that, rather than going on to your rolling contract, which is what your agreement will do beyond its fixed period, is speak to your letting agent, speak to your landlord and ask to refix him for another period of time.
Right, okay. It's good advice. James, thanks very much indeed for your help. James Hummerstone-Pope there on the housing problem that we're going to have more and more of, I think, in this country, because it's very clear that most landlords, particularly those which are more unscrupulous, shall we say, are going to go for the government offer. They're going to go for the Circo dangle, because they're going to say, wow, we get paid not only for 5 years up front, pretty much, we get guarantees, we don't have any problems. If there are problems, they'll deal with it. I won't have to worry about it.